So it was just my trophies up on one wall. We had like these walls. And I felt like God told me to go up there and like look. And I was like, okay. So I look, kind of like reminisce. And he's like, all right, now like turn your back to those trophies and look at this blank wall. He goes, you're going to fill a whole new wall. And this wall, these trophies are not going to be actual trophies. It's going to be people that you get to impact.
Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and SmartPro Financial are not affiliated.
Hey, Sam Rogers, thank you for being here on our SmartPro Radio podcast. We are so excited to have you. I want to get this out there off the bat because we're located in Sarasota, Florida, but our kind of SmartPro HQ2 is in Roanoke, Virginia. And our Roanoke people are so pumped to listen to you because you are a Virginia Tech Hokie legend there. And tell us a little bit about that and tell us about who you are. Introduce yourself to the audience that may be the first time they're hearing from you.
Gosh, thank you for the introduction. That was awesome. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I did play football at Virginia Tech from 2013, 2016. Was that typical walk-on turn scholarship story that people tend to love. I grew up in Hanover County, played football at Hanover High School, ended up being drafted by the Rams in 2017, and I'm sure we'll get into all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Didn't pan out in the NFL for too long. And then now I'm actually, among other things, the head coach at Hanover High School right now where I played football. But to your point, the walk-on turn scholarship story, I think some people end up loving that story because you're more relatable. Yeah. You wouldn't believe the amount of people that have come up to me and been like, hey, you're actually not as big as I thought. And I'm like, I don't know how to take that.
Yeah, right. Why are you sizing me up off the bat, right?
People come up to me like, I think I could have done what you did. You know, I'm like, yeah. All right, well, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So when you're a walk-on, you get scholarship. There's, ESPN will do that special on game day where somebody gets that scholarship in the locker room and everyone goes nuts for them and it's, incredibly excited because they know what that means. Like, is there like that kindred spirit with other athletes that have gone through that? Like, because that story is so relatable and it's so college football. Like, it only seems to happen in that environment, really. Like, it's such a fabric of the sport.
100%. I will say the videos that you see now was not something that like I experienced, like where it was like a surprise thing in a team meeting. I think that started becoming a big thing, like honestly, post 2016. I think there's a couple of those things out, but people didn't even start leveraging social media the way that they're leveraging it now and that kind of stuff. Yeah. All that being said, yes, there is a kindred spirit with the guys that take a chance because there's a risk. You're betting on yourself going in there, and it's an intense college locker room. I mean, when you go in there, man, like everybody was the best player at their high school, the best player in their county, the best player in their state. It's an intense environment. So, there's definitely a kindred spirit there with the other guys.
That's awesome. No, I know. So for me and my wife, we both went to the University of Georgia. So our like, example of that is Stetson Bennett, and it's like, he doesn't get better than that. You got the little Georgia boy chewing tobacco at the post-game interviews. And you're like, who is this guy? He's too small to be the quarterback. He's like, nothing works. You got 5 stars galore behind him, but here he is, and he's the heart and soul of it all. And it's just so cool when you see that in sports and in leadership in general.
No doubt. Everybody loves that underdog story, but to the people that are actually living out that underdog story, they do not view it as an underdog story. Like Stetson, I guarantee you, he is not like, oh yeah, I'm just worse than everybody else and I'm going to take a chance. He's like, no, I'm better, and I've just been overlooked.
Yeah. So. That chip on. So it's that chip on your shoulder, right? Is that the mentality of like, I'm gonna go? So what did you have to do? Let me go into this. What did you have to do then to prove yourself? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of walk you through that whole process for me, but essentially, I was a 4-year starter at Hanover. I played quarterback most of the time there, but I also played running back, linebacker, tight end, played a bunch of different stuff. And my senior year, I was like offensive player of the year for the Metro. I was an all-state player and had all the awards and all that stuff. But for whatever reason, people told me, this is the comment I heard a couple times. You're just too big of a risk. Like, we don't know where we're going to put you. You know, you're not very tall, you're not very fast, and all those things were true. The thing that, frustrated me was, well, it doesn't matter. I'm still better than X, Y, and Z. I'm still better than that person and all that stuff. And of course, you have a, exaggerated view of yourself, whatever it may be. All that being said, Virginia Tech and UVA came in late and they offered me preferred walk-on opportunities. And they were actually recruiting me fairly heavily for being a recruited walk-on. Like, I remember Shane Beamer was calling me just about every day. He's an awesome recruiter, an awesome person. And then Mike London, who was a phenomenal recruiter. I mean, he did an in-home visit for me as a preferred walk-on. Like, he came into my house. But that process was intense. And then the way it happened for me is they told me that there's going to be an open competition at fullback. Okay. Both schools were telling me that.
Okay.
I went to Virginia Tech because their sites were on ACC championship and national championship. Virginia's sites were on beating Virginia Tech. So I went with the one with better vision.
That's right.
And I went there, and it was just an open competition. I got to compete against 2 juniors. A lot of it was timing for me. There was no one in front of me that had their position set. It wasn't like a returning starter. So it kind of worked out in my favor. But that's kind of the process for me and how it played out.
Now, and you played for 2 different head coaches while you're there, but one of them is a legend in Frank Beamer, right? And it's interesting. Schools have those legendary coaches that are so ingrained in the fabric of the university, in the institution. At Georgia, it was Vince Dooley. Alabama now it's Bear Bryant and Nick Saban, right? And Virginia Tech, like, it was Frank Beamer and is Frank Beamer. You mentioned Shane Beamer, his son, who was a coach there as well. And what was that like? And then going from that, you went through something that so many people go through, is just a leadership change.
Yeah.
Somebody exiting and somebody new coming in. And walk us through that as well.
Well, I'll start with Coach Beamer. To me, it's Coach Beamer and Coach Shane, right? Like, that's kind of the way we called them. But Coach Beamer and Coach Shane, they both believed in me when a lot of other people did not. And they have a special place in my heart because of that.
Yeah.
They gave me a shot. They gave me an opportunity. I think Coach Beamer had this elevated view of me for whatever reason. Call it favor, call it whatever. I mean, he thought I was better than even I thought I was.
Yeah.
And because of that, I just got opportunities that I don't think other people maybe would have gotten in my position. And so that was awesome. So he had a special place in my heart. He is like such a family man, and that's what drew me to him. Yeah. Quick side note about Coach Beamer. My brother and his friends were in a house fire in college. This was before Coach Beamer knew me or was trying to recruit me or anything like that. They were in a house fire, and one of my brother's friends, one of our good family friends, he was hurt. It was in critical condition for a while. Wow. He's great now. Everything's good. But Coach Beamer, without even knowing me, there was no angle. It wasn't trying to get publicity. It wasn't doing it on social media so everybody else would see.
Yeah.
He just called him and checked in on him because he had a similar story. Right? And
yeah.
That is huge.
Yeah.
Like, he is a genuine person. That is a genuine family. Yeah. And you just don't see that nowadays. I feel like you see people pretending to be good in order to be liked instead of just being who they are. And that's another thing that drew me to Virginia Tech was him. So going into my senior year, when he was stepping down, whether people say it was necessary or whatever it may be, it's still hard. It's like, that's a guy that took a shot on you. That's a guy that gave you opportunities. It's a guy that believed in you.
Yep.
At times, like I said, when I didn't even believe in myself like that. Mm-hmm. So going through that leadership change was definitely difficult. When he announced it, I remember crying in the team meeting room. That was just like a tough situation. And then there's always this fear, who's going to come in next?
Yeah.
Personally, for me, the fear was just being like selfishly was, are they going to use a fullback? Are they going to even use me? Like, am I going to go from having a pretty big role to having no role? Like, what's it going to work? Like, how's that going to happen? So I definitely relate to that stuff that's going on in college football right now. There's a fear with that,
Yeah.
Whether it's warranted or not. And then Coach Fuente came in, and then I felt like we also had kindred spirits. Like he is a worker. He taught me a ton about leadership. I think he's misunderstood. I still keep in contact with him today, and we had one of our best years. We had our best year ever when I was there over 4 years. It was the best year with Coach Fuente. He lit a fire under us. That was awesome. That senior class really was drawn to him, and it was awesome being able to be around two blue collar family men, which is what they are.
So you talked about that story with Coach Beamer. What, you probably learned a lot out of that. There's probably a lot that you learned that you got through either observation or just direct impact lessons from someone like that. That's such a high performer, had so much success in such a difficult environment. Like, I can't imagine, and I don't have an idea of exactly what being a head coach at an elite college or university is like, especially now, but I can't imagine something that's probably less stressful than that. Like, that's got to be such a just pressure cooker environment that you're looking at and you're like, oh my goodness, like, I have not only fans and donors and players, but this is such a competitive landscape amongst universities now, especially in the environment that we're in with college football realignment and with NIL stuff, where it's like, you've got to be good all the time. And that pressure to succeed is there. And you're always recruiting and re-recruiting and going through this process, and how tough that can be. And then these coaches still take time because they're having to impact young men's lives along the way and make them from 17, 18-year-olds into men that are impactful in society. What lessons did you learn from Coach Beamer? What lessons did you learn from Coach Fuente when it came to that?
Well, I'll start with Coach Beamer. A lot of it was observing how genuine of a person he is. Like, for example, if it was fake, eventually he'd get exhausted from it.
Yeah.
From like putting on this facade.
Sure.
But there's an example where my dad, for whatever reason, they were at like a golf event together and they just got in the same foursome. So my dad got to be around him for 18 holes of golf and a meal afterwards, and just got to hang out with Frank Beamer and two other guys. Mm-hmm. And people constantly throughout the day saw that it was Frank Beamer and would come up to him. And every time he'd take time and he'd talk through it and like hang out with them and treat them like a person, not like he was too big for them. And he was in his 29th year of coaching, Think about how many of those conversations he had.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, so many of those where people just wanted a shot to talk to him. Mm-hmm. And my dad asked him, he's like, hey, I got to ask, like, does that ever get annoying? Like, and he goes, you know what, Todd? He goes, at some point, people didn't want to talk to me. At one point in my life, people didn't want to talk to me. So I'm grateful that they would even want to come and chat with me for a second. So it's like, that's the perspective, So most of what I learned from him was just watching what kind of family man he was. He loved having his grandkids around, like Shane's kids, loved having them around. The way that he even operated with his son, you could tell he's still so proud of him. It reminded me of my relationship with my dad. Like, my dad is a phenomenal dad as well. So a lot of stuff that I learned from him was like, gosh, he's real. Like, he is really who he is made out to be by the people in Blacksburg. The things I've learned from Fuente are not all too different. And again, I know that he's a highly criticized coach amongst the Hokie nation, but I think a lot of people don't understand who he is. He is a guy that really loves his people and protects his people and cares for his people. Mm-hmm. And even he admits this, where he went wrong was not showing that side to the public, to the media enough. Mm-hmm. But that's because he didn't want to put on a facade. He didn't like doing that. He didn't like doing the politic game. He didn't like that stuff. He likes his people and cares for his people. And he had intentional plans around developing leaders, which I took so much from. We had a leadership council. He would meet with us on a regular cadence, and he was intentional about developing leaders and making it cool to be a leader, to stand out, to be a winner. And we had one of the hardest off seasons that I've ever been a part of when they came in that year. And we as seniors, because we hadn't won anything yet, we craved it.
Yeah.
And he even admits like he benefited from also like having seniors that craved that and were ready for that.
Yeah.
But man, I am so grateful for him. We wouldn't have had that year without him. We really wouldn't have.
You know, it's interesting you bring up the politics side of being in college football, because it's making sure the media is satisfied, the donors are satisfied. It's making sure the people in the organization, the chancellors, people running the presidents of the universities, it's such a strange thing that you look at as a fan and you go, well, their job's to go beat X team. Like, and now they're fundraising. It's an intense environment, and it's not just about coaching. And you have some of the most amazing coaches that do so many things behind the scenes. But if there's that part of it where it's the playing the game, you might say, it's tough. It's very difficult.
The politics side of being a head coach, especially nowadays, is huge.
Yeah.
You've got to, like you said, you got to constantly appeal to donors and media, because just like that, they just turn.
Oh yeah.
And it's a tough deal. And especially, here's the hard part, especially to have a unique opinion.
Yeah. If
you have an opinion that's different than what people want you to have, they're not going to like you for it, you know? So for a guy like Coach Fuente, again, who I love dearly, it was hard he admits that it was hard for him to get like around that.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I think we were really, really good that year because of him.
Well, and the other hard thing is you're going through changing from one organization to another. There's always a transition period, no matter if it's business and any type of leadership, all the way down to, or all the way up rather to a elite, head coach in a college football environment. Like, it's difficult. You're having to get buy-in and get people to go, okay, they're got to earn people's trust, and how are we going to do things and get over the fears. Some of the fears you even said, like, hey, I play this more vintage position in fullback. Some schools don't even know how to or use this position anymore. How am I going to be impacted when this coach comes in, when this leader comes in? Did you have to have conversations with your teammates to encourage them, hey, stick it out? Because we see nowadays in so many areas, and I don't mean to jump on, young men in college athletics that are trying to figure this out and what their career is going to look like and all that, but just anywhere in society nowadays where when things get tough, when there's adversity, it's instead of fight, it seems like it's run. It seems like the first thing is to go the opposite direction. What's the easier path? And maybe that's the right move, and maybe it's not a lot of times. But for you going in that, you mentioned your own personally, this is what I'm fearing. What about your teammates, and what did you have to help people overcome as a leader, as a senior in that environment?
Yeah, the transfer culture was not as big in 2016 as it is now, obviously. Like, the transfer portal is unreal now. So there wasn't as much of, oh my gosh, they're going to leave. Like, it wasn't as much of that as I think there would be now. But kind of speaking to that environment in general that has invaded our culture over the past 10 to 15 years of victimhood is really detrimental, especially to young men. Mm-hmm. To not be able to look in the mirror and say, I am where I am because of the decisions I made. To not be able to do that, and to constantly incentivize, like legitimately incentivize selfishness is an issue. And things in place right now incentivize selfishness
Yeah.
and making a fool of yourself even at times. But like, that's what's incentivized. And here's the issue with it. While that might be good and well to always look and point the finger, and right now it might seem good, like to do that, and maybe there are some financial incentives to that. The issue for me is these people are eventually going to be leading families.
Yeah.
They're going to be, they're most likely going to have a wife, and they're going to have kids one day at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't think that training selfishness for 25 years and then stepping into a relationship that's built on selflessness, being married, and selflessness, which being a dad.
Yeah.
You can't think that that's going to be a good formula for that. So that's where my heart breaks for like this society and all this stuff in general right now, is we're incentivizing and training selfishness and always pointing the finger. Yeah. I'll tell you one quick story real quick. One of the things that won me over with Coach Fuente, we heard about the offense at Memphis, and we heard about how like we were going to have this fast-paced offense. We're going to put up points, all this other stuff. Our first offensive meeting, I won't say what he actually said. I will avoid the one of the words in there, but it fired me up. I'll tell you that. He goes in there. He says, "You think a bleeping post pattern is going to fix this offense?" He said, "You need to look yourself in the mirror. You guys weren't good because you didn't execute, period. And until we have a bunch of people that look in the mirror and try to get better, we're not going to get any better as a team." And I was like jumping up out of my chair.
Yeah.
Like he put ownership back on the individual. Stop blaming everything else.
Yeah.
You need to take ownership.
That's
and
so
like, that's when a lot of those seniors, I'm telling you, and even those like rising juniors, like Isaiah Ford, Bucky Hodge, like those guys, we were like, yeah, we're ready to go.
Let's roll. Yeah. So, we talked about this earlier before we started recording. We kind of did a, here's some things I want to try to hit on. And one of the things that I brought up to you is I got to listen to Coach Mark Richt, who was the head coach at the University of Georgia prior to Kirby Smart, around the same time period, really from 2003 to 2000, I believe 16. And, he talked about one of the things when he walked into houses, because you walk in, you mentioned your recruiting experience, or somebody's coming to your house and they're getting to know you and the family. And he said, I was walking to houses, and these weren't men, they're boys still. They're high schoolers. They're learning how to grow up in society and become men. Yeah. And he goes, the vast majority of the houses I walked into, there was no man in the house at all. No one was teaching these lessons. Yeah. And he goes, I had so many moms pull me inside and said, please teach my son to be a man. Please teach him. I know what I can do as his mom, but can you please help me teach him how to be a man, take care of him, show him how to do this, how to actually, have those life skills that need to be provided when there's an absence of a father, and there's an absence of a an actual example of what a good man is. And so he talked about my job. He goes, I felt like my job was to take people from boyhood to manhood in that 4 years or that 3 years that I had with them. Because of what you just said, they're going to go out into society later. They're going to get married. They're going to work. They're going to have businesses. They're going to go do things. And some of them may even have the rare opportunity of coming into a whole lot of money that can be life-changing in the NFL, which is so many people's goal and desire to get to. He's like, that was my job. Yeah. And so I'm sure you saw that with coaches too, where you're like, man, that's what they're doing. How did you get those influences? And then beyond that, you didn't have that experience because you had a father that was teaching you those lessons. And what did those lessons look like, and what was your father's impact on you in your life?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was unbelievable. Like you said, I think I was unaware to the fact of what Mark Richt noticed walking into the homes, that a lot of people did not grow up with a positive male role model. Mm-hmm. I was unaware of that until I started coaching and really diving into other people's lives. So I think I kind of just operated with blinders on a little bit. But my dad, specifically him, he showed me what it's like to, one, love my mom. And that was huge. My dad didn't say this. Someone else told me this. He said, the best thing that you can do for your kids is love their mom. Mm-hmm. I was like, gosh. And that was true of my dad. Like, there was multiple times where my dad would would, like, without my mom around, be like, gosh, your mom's just amazing. And she does so much for us. And like, he would just like be enamored with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. Like, my mom is awesome. All right. It's great. Like, it already built that. My dad's a worker. Like, that guy does not stop working. He also has that like chip on his shoulder mentality. He's a risk taker. He owns several businesses involving the construction real estate world.
Okay.
I can't say enough things about him. A lot of the things was observing.
Yeah.
The big thing that he'd talk about, again, putting ownership back on us. He's like, look, there's things in life you can control and there's things that you can't. Focus on things you can control.
Mm-hmm.
And he would always just go back to that. My dad also was a person that believed in me tremendously. Like, he believed in me. He never thought Division I football was too big for me. He knew that was my goal, Division I football in the NFL. He knew that was my goal, and he always pushed me to do it and believed that I could do it. And he allowed me to take ownership of it. My dad was not the dad that was like, all right, you're pushing the car 100 yards down the road. You're going to wake up. He wasn't that. He facilitated and fostered an environment where I wanted to work hard. It wasn't forced on me. So he's a great, great dad.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. You know, that reflects two things is, you know, I've heard that said before recently, not something that I think a lot of people know of like, hey, if you want to show your kids, like if you're a husband, love your wife well. Like that's so impactful. And I think that's something in today's society can be so overlooked because what you're doing all the time for so many people is their heads down, looking at a screen or looking at the news, constantly distracted. Hey, get over here to the kids. They're, you know, it's like, it's such a high pressure world for so many of us that, you know, that human connection and showing that cannot be there so many times.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. And then something we interviewed Rachel Cruz, she talked about raising good kids and what it was like to be Dave Ramsey's daughter and like that. And, you know, what lessons she was like, I just take it with my kids that more is caught than taught. It's they're observing you. They're constantly watching you. Yeah. And what example are you showing? And I think that leans right into what you just said of like, hey, they're observing what it looks like to be a good husband. And I'm able to have a front row to it. And what it looks like to be an involved father.
Yeah.
You know, and one that's going to believe in me and be there, but also is going to make me work for it. And then show me what hard work looks like and what risk taking looks like. And all those things that you mentioned are what got you to where you described at the beginning with playing at Virginia Tech and where you were. It's like, hey, I was taking a risk. I was going to work hard. Like I had a chip on my shoulder. So you look at that and you're like, man, that's the same stuff that you got as a kid. And what are so many kids getting right now if they don't have that positive role model? It's getting there from somewhere. Something's getting there. Like it's not just it remains empty. It's being filled with something. What is it?
No doubt. I mean, what you just hit on too, there's a spiritual truth in this. When you trust the love of your father, you're more willing to take risks.
Yeah.
You're more willing to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still have, whether it's financial or not, I still have the security blanket of, all right, my dad's still there for me. My dad still has my best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. Right? Like when you trust, that's the parable of the talents.
Yeah.
Right? The parable of talents, and I think it's Luke 19. There was one who hid his talents, and his justification for hiding his talents, he had the wrong perception of the master. Mm-hmm. He said, I know you to be a hard man, and I know you to reap where you don't sow. And the master's like, oh, you do? Well, that's not my heart.
Yeah.
You've missed it. But the ones that trusted the Father are willing to take risks. In the Message version of that scripture, it says, risk everything and you'll gain more than you've ever dreamed. Hold on to it and you'll end up holding the bag. Something like that. Like hold on to your life and you'll end up just being stuck.
Yeah.
Right. So like there's this idea, like we're willing to take risks, trusting the Father, trusting our earthly Father and the Father.
Sure.
Man, we've got an abundance of freedom to go take risks, man.
That's right. Yeah, no, I love that. That's amazing. Because if you're listening to this and you're a leader, you listen to this and you're in, you know, the business world, or you're listening to this and you're going, okay, I'm a client of Smart Pro Financial. I'm working with one of Smart Pro's advisors. I'm in the market. I'm growing assets. Like there's an amount of risk taking to that. even if you know everything, because you are part of that culture now that's looking at news, that's distracted, that's part of this environment where everything's coming at you all the time to distract and to take you off course. And there's a level of just calmness that you can have, and you go, I'm okay.
Yes.
I'm on the right track. Like, I'm good. And I think so many times we overlook that for the here and now. I think that was a real positive and impactful message that you just shared with us there. And, I want to go back to your time playing football, because you had a great senior year, right? There's highlights right now on YouTube of you and, playing in the last game. You're and the announcer goes, he might be the ultimate Hokie. Like, I mean, you are all in Virginia Tech culture and lore, and had an opportunity then to take your talents and go to the NFL for a period of time and actually get drafted, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is a huge accomplishment.
Thank you. Yeah.
Like that's an enormous thing, because let's go back to the beginning. There's too much of a risk. You're a preferred walk-on. A couple of schools are talking to you. I believe it. To drafted in the NFL, and to be drafted is it's a small group of people.
Yeah. It was an awesome day. It was crazy. The draft process, we could have a whole podcast on that. Like that, it is stressful, exciting, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Getting the call and actually having the conversation was nuts. I'll just give you a picture of what 2016, 2017 looked
Please.
like for me. November of 2016, right after the UVA game, I proposed to my high school sweetheart. We got engaged. I left to go train down in Miami in January of 2017.
Okay.
Trained, then went to the Senior Bowl, then went to the Combine, then came back home for a little bit to train back home. Did the pro day, still training, still waiting.
Mm-hmm.
My now wife was planning our wedding. I get drafted late April.
Okay.
I go out in May, come back to get married in July. Then we both go back out for camp and all that stuff. And then I get cut in August. That was the 8-month or 9-month span of like the highs and lows.
Wow.
And when I say cut, I was cut and put on practice squad. And it's just like, you're learning, holy cow. And there was I'm sure we'll get into it. There's a whole thing that God was doing even in my heart in that season of like, man, I spent my whole life trying to prove people wrong, prove doubters wrong. In this one moment, I felt like I proved doubters right. And there was this identity thing that was being ripped from me. So, yeah.
No, I want to jump into that right now, because there's so many people who can relate to this. They can't relate to getting drafted. They can't relate to, being a legend in their college. Like so many of us want that, but the very few people will ever know what that experience is like. Yeah. But so many people, almost everybody's going to know what the experience is like of, this is how things were mapped out in my head. This is how it was supposed to go. This is the story I was writing for myself. It's not what happened. And it changed. And my identity of who I felt like I was and who I was building up to and what I thought the path that was going to be there for me is changing and right in front of me. And it goes through people that whether it's, hey, this marriage didn't work out the way I thought it was, or I'm retiring and I'm leaving my job and I'm scared to death because life's changing right now. And I don't know what that's going to look like. Or I got my kids are going to college and now it's just a husband and wife at home going, oh, what do we do now? Because this is totally different than what we thought it was going to look like.
Yeah.
And you had to reinvent that. And you also had to get over it.
Yeah.
And how did you do that?
It's a lot of grit. No, I'm just kidding. When I was a junior, I prayed something like this, and it was when things were going well, Rick. Like, it's a bold thing to pray when things are going well. But I was like, Lord, if it means I get to know you more, take it all the way, put it all on the table. And then I remember in 2018 when I got cut again, and this time there was no practice squad opportunity. It was like, you're going back home. I remember sitting in my empty apartment and, like crying, like, Lord, why is this happening? Like, I thought this plan was the NFL. And he's like, you asked for this. you asked for this.
Mm.
Like, you're going to see me in a whole new way through this season. And that's really what happened. There's that season of my life from 2017 to 2019 was a time for about a year I looked on with like such bitterness and like regret. And now that is like a pillar, that is like a trophy for me in my life because of where my wife and I are now compared to where we were before, spiritually, and like our identity shift. I was a believer before. I wouldn't have told you that my identity was in football. I would have counseled against that.
Yeah.
But you don't know until it's ripped away from you that it actually was in football. And it's not stable for that to be in football. It's not stable for it to be in your job. It's not stable for it to be in these things. It's like, do I trust God for God, or do I trust him for just what he gives me?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that can point up to the sky after, getting a touchdown. But then there's a difference in like, hey, I got my dream ripped away from me, and I still believe you're good. And I still believe you're with me. And I still believe you're for me. That whole season was huge for us in that. So, I mean, it's the verse that I'm sure people have heard, but in Romans, where he says, all things work together for the good of those who love God and live according to his purpose. All things. So even our own failures can work back together for our good if we trust him with it.
Mm-hmm.
All things can work together for good. So now with the stuff that I'm doing now, I have way more impact on people and the community than I ever had in the NFL or playing at Virginia Tech.
Wow.
Than I ever had.
Yeah.
With the different things that I get to do now. So I used to look at it with bitterness, and now it's like, God, I couldn't imagine life any differently.
How long did it take you to have that change?
Gosh, there's not like a clear, all right, now I'm good, you know, but I do think like the final closure on it was when the Rams won the Super Bowl.
Explain that.
Well, the Rams went to the
drafted you, right?
Yeah, they drafted me. The Rams went to the Super Bowl in 2018.
Okay.
And Rick, I couldn't even watch. Like, I was just so jealous.
Yeah.
I really was. I was like, this was the year after. Like, I guess it was the 2019 Super Bowl, but 2018, 2019 season, regardless. Like, I literally had to like go back in my room, like close the door. And I just like tried to put on worship music and like, Lord, I still trust you. I still trust you. I still trust you. Just because I was bitter. Like, I was like, I should be playing. Like, they drafted me. Why didn't they use me? Like, all that stuff. I was mad. And then I'm still like kind of getting over that. And then there's like this little thought like, oh, I'm kind of like, I hate to admit this, but I was like, oh, I'm kind of glad they lost. They lost to the Patriots. Mm-hmm. And then I'm getting through it and working through it and all that stuff. And then they go back, and maybe it was 2021. I can't remember when they beat the Bengals. But during that game, I was finally like, no, I want them to win. Like, I'm happy for them, and I want this to happen for them, And they won, and I was like, hey, that chapter is fully closed, and I'm fully looking at this new thing. I did feel like God gave me this word in the midst of that season, now that I'm talking through it. But at my parents' house, there's this trophy room. Like, all my brother, my sister, and I, like, we had all of our trophies and awards.
I love that.
And they had taken their stuff down and moved it into their house. So it was just my trophies up on one wall. We had like these walls. And I felt like God told me to go up there and like, look. And I was like, okay. So I look, kind of like reminisce. And he's like, all right, now like turn your back to those trophies and look at this blank wall. He goes, you're going to fill a whole new wall. And this wall, these trophies are not going to be actual trophies. It's going to be people that you get to impact. And it was like a shift in season and mindset for me of like, all right, this is no longer about obtaining articles and awards and all. It's no longer about that. The shift is on what the Lord has for me as far as helping people. So,
wow, what a moment.
Yeah.
Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and SmartPro Financial are not affiliated.
So that shift has happened. I want to get into what you're doing now. All right. Because what you're doing now is, I was listening to you talk, and I don't know if it was a podcast you were on or something, and you're like, I'm not busy. My calendar is full. I'm not sitting here going, oh my gosh, I'm so busy all the time and I'm running from one thing. You're like, it's full. And it's full because you're a high school football coach. You have a leadership company that you're part of, where you're teaching leaders how to be good, impactful leaders. You have a fitness company that you have going on. And you mentioned to me a few weeks ago, a school, right? A small Christian school that you guys are growing. And you got a lot going on. Most people would say, dude, you're super busy. And you're like, no, my schedule's full because I got a wall to fill right here next to these trophies of people. And you had that moment. So how has that allowed you, and that mind shift allowed you to have this impact now in all these different areas and all these different people that need somebody to be in their life and to be a fantastic leader?
Yeah. I don't know. It's saying yes to things that God puts in front of you and trust that he's going to provide for it, and there's a certain element of risk. I know some people will say that it's too much. Maybe there's validity to that. I don't know. You say yes and you trust the Lord. And if it's too much, he'll let me know. But that's where we're at right now. Like you said, it's full. It's not busy. It's full because we've chosen it. My wife and I, we're on mission together. It's not my thing, then her thing. Even Hanover football, she is a part of that because she is supporting that. She is with that. Like that means in the fall, there's nights away from home, and I don't get to help with bedtime with our boys and all that stuff. So we're on mission together with Hanover football, like you said, which is a joy. I love doing it. Our mission is to use football to build better husbands and better fathers who show up, love, and don't quit. I have the fitness business that I started around the same time. And fitness business sounds more elaborate than what it is. It's 5 a.m. workouts 5 times a week. And there's about 50 people signed up month to month.
Yeah.
That's not like main source of income for me, but that's like kind of like a side income for me. But it's a ton of fun. We'll start pushing that to grow that more finally this year. But that's just a great community of people that like to work hard. And that's a ton of fun. The school, we said yes to that 2 years ago, and this is our first year to launch it. But my wife and I, along with our friends, it's called Train Up Academy. And Train Up Academy is built on the Acton methodology, if anybody knows anything about that. But it's learner-driven, Socratic method. It really goes back to one of the things I'm really passionate about is building victors, not victims. Mm-hmm. It gets away from coddling, and it creates an environment where people want to go thrive. But it's a Christian micro school, and we get to share the love of Jesus with them, and seeing them step out in their faith from at 5 to 9 years old is just unbelievable. So it's so cool. And then I did a leadership consulting, which is like my main job, I guess you would say. That's my main job, but I help small businesses, leaders, teams establish vision, establish core values, and understand what it means to be a leader. Through connection. Like I really believe that connection drives performance, and learning to connect with the people that you're leading, advance them, train them, develop them, encourage them is really important. And similar strategies that I've seen be effective in the sports world do translate to this when they're done well. So those are the different buckets. But like I said, all of that stuff, I get to have impact on people, which is an honor. And I want
to jump into 2 of them because I think you have a unique perspective that is very valuable to our listener. And I want to start first with the leadership part of the conversation and what you're doing in leadership consulting. What would you say right now? Someone's listening to this and they're a leader. Let's say they're leading a business. Let's say they have direct reports. They don't have to be a CEO of a business, but they have people that look to them for their leadership. They would be considered a boss or whatever you want to use term-wise. What would you say right now? Leaders, stop doing this. this is something that I'm seeing that is not good. Stop doing this thing. This is tearing apart your ability to lead well and to grow your people. You have anything that comes to
Stop
mind? Yeah.
stop trying to look like a leader.
Mm,
Like sometimes we're so hell bent on the perception of being a leader that we lack any humility through the process.
mm,
I had someone ask me, I was talking, one of the things I talk about is bottom up feedback. Like you should get feedback from the people you're leading.
yeah.
You're leading them. Like
Yeah.
you should be humble enough to get feedback from them and almost like beg for it. Like, hey, come on, tell me. Like
Yeah.
there's no tension with me. I'm not going to get offended by this. One person's honest rebuttal to this was, but Sam, like, I still need to be viewed as the leader. Like, according to who? Like,
Yeah.
who are you trying to prove that to? Like, stop trying to look like the leader. It's like the person that tries to look like the leader is not the leader.
Mhm.
The person who leads is the leader.
Yeah.
Like, and leadership is not about being perfect. It's about going first.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're willing to go first into the cave, into that dark cave, into that abyss. You're just willing to go first.
Yeah.
That's all. And you need people to help correct you and guide you in that. It's actually one of the reasons why I'm really big on establishing what you're about. If you don't establish what you're about, let's say like I'm leading a company and I don't say, here's the vision, here are the core values, here's what we're about. If I don't do that, then I become the standard. And if me as a human, if I become a standard, then I'm going to be up and down, and so will my company. But if I'm like, hey, this is what we're about, and I'm going to follow this with everything I have. But if I get out of line, I need you to tell me. Then we're all aligned on something.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. I heard Craig Rochelle say once, and he has a leadership. He does a lot in leadership, and he said, "Ask people that work with you or for you, however you want to, say it. Right? If you're a leader, what is it like to work with me?"
Yeah.
Because if you ask that, because you're not, it's going to be so uncomfortable. I can't imagine. It would be. Could you imagine? Hey, what is it like? Sam, what is it like to work with me?
Yeah.
And you're going, what do I say? Like, am I honest? Do I give enough? Like, and then as a leader, you got to be, okay, what if they say something like, well, I don't know if you show up enough. I don't know if you're clear enough. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, you're going to have to be in a position to be able to take that and learn. I think about that even going back to like marriage. Like, what's it like to be married to me? Oh, years. Okay, that's a vulnerable spot and question to ask.
Your wife would be more honest than the employees initially. But
that's right. That's right. That might be a good test before you ask your employees, right? But oh my goodness, it's a tough thing to learn. When he said that, I was like, oh man, and he was like, this would be the hardest thing you do, and I was like, yeah, you're right. I mean,
there's a freedom in it though. Like once we can get past our own ego, would you rather look worse and get better or look better and be getting worse? Like,
yeah.
Again, stop trying. You said the one thing, stop trying to justify yourself. Stop worrying about protecting your image. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? Just do what's best for the company. One of the things that like I have to repeat to myself with the football team, with all the different stuff.
Yeah.
Am I seeking my way or the way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like my way or the way.
Yeah.
If I'm seeking my way, I'm always going to be constantly defending my opinions.
That's right.
But if I'm seeking the way, I want feedback on my opinions and I want to hear your opinions.
Yeah.
Like, what is that like? So again, leadership is leadership no matter where you're at. If you can operate in humility, you got a shot. You got a shot.
The other perspective that you have is we have a lot of people that have families, and you're dealing with high schoolers every day, right? Like you're a high school football coach. Like you're in it with these young men, and you see the environment, and you see what's going on, and you see you got your finger right on the culture. What right now do you feel like is something that, as parents, as people, we need to know? Hey, this is where kids are at and what they're struggling with, and here's what your maybe misconception of young people right now is, because here's what I'm seeing that's positive, because so much is focused on the negative all the time. And I'm sure there's that there where you're like, this is a problem, but here's the positive. What do you have there?
I was told this in 2020 when I took over the job. They said, don't raise the standards for these kids. You're going to lose them.
Ooh.
And I was like, what a pathetic thing to say.
Yeah.
Don't raise the stand. What are you actually saying when you say that? You're saying kids are soft, kids are different, kids need to be coddled. I think that's the very reason we've produced these type of individuals that don't want any responsibility because they've never been given responsibility. And more importantly, we've never told them that they can do it and that they were made for it and that responsibility is good. Jordan Peterson talks about this, but he's like, there is a correlation between responsibility and joy.
Yeah.
And we have been preaching the opposite. We have been preaching this hedonistic way of living that the less responsibility and the more you pursue your immediate gratification, you're going to be more joyful. That is a lie from the pit of hell. So it turns out if you raise standards, but you're simultaneously reminding them you have what it takes.
Yeah.
Do it. And I'm not going to coddle you. And I will not coddle. You have what it takes. Like, they will rise to that, and they actually crave that. When I tell I tell them every year, when I tell our players the story of don't raise the standards for these kids, you're going to lose them. And then we look at them and say, well, we don't believe that about you. They puff up. They're ready to go.
Yeah, I bet.
So the lie is that they're soft. The lie is that they can't handle it. They can.
Yeah.
What gets in the way is, as parents, it's our own insecurities of seeing our kid fail. Failure's good. Let them fail. Yeah. Let them fall and coach them up through it. But them failing, them not playing is not the worst thing in the world. Sometimes it is the best thing in the world for them to deal with.
Wow. That was a lot of truth right there. That's awesome. I love that because you answered both questions. Hey, here's the biggest problem right now, and here's where people are excelling. Is the problem is the standard has dropped so much, and it's don't push. Don't give responsibility. Don't let people accomplish things. And in what dynamic society has that ever worked?
Never. Like, Rick, if I told you, like, what would I be saying about you if I said, hey, we had this meeting at 11, but if you show up by 11:15, that's totally fine. You'd be like, how little do you think of me? I can't show up on time for this thing that's been scheduled for a month. You know what I mean? So when we think we're helping them by lowering the standard, we're actually saying, we don't really believe in you. We don't believe in you.
Yeah, that's right. That's the message behind it.
Yeah.
That's so correct. No, that's awesome. And, I know right now you have, like you said, you have a full schedule and you're always constantly, pushing that envelope with what you're doing and the things that you're involved in, from the coaching to the school to, the leadership, consultations, the leader, that I think is so impactful, because if somebody's listening right now, they have said, okay, I'm getting a lot of really valuable information. How did they interact with you further on that? Like that business, how do people interact with it that say, hey, how do I get to know Sam better? How do I get to follow this company, what they're doing? Because I see a huge value in here for me and my business, or me and where I'm at in life.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. One way is to go to our website. So it's Build Coaching Company, but our website is buildthearmy.com. Mm-hmm. And you could fill out a form there and just say that you heard this podcast and you wanted to connect with me. You want to connect with Sam Rogers. So that's an easy way to do that. And we could link up on a call or email, whatever it may be. And I could share with you some different things. I do speaking engagements. I do workshops. And those could be even like recurring workshops for leadership teams. I also do like monthly small group leadership coaching, and then also one-on-one leadership coaching. And it's all built around the client, right? It's like whatever the client needs on that. And again, there's some simple truths in leadership that if we lived out and we were held accountable to, then I really do think they could be impactful. So that's one of the ways they can do that. Also, you can follow some stuff that I'm doing on Instagram. My Instagram is Coach5am. So it kind of looks like Coach Sam, right? Yeah. My brother actually came up with that. But so you can see some more of the stuff that I put out there. I also put out my new YouTube show podcast around better husbands and better fathers. That's just called the Coach Sam Show. It's spelled Coach 5 a.m. But there's a couple different ways. So the website, Instagram, and then that YouTube show would be the 3 ways.
So I want to ask you one last question. I want to ask you two. All right. I think we got a couple minutes here. So I want to ask you two. Number one, is there anything that you feel like you want our listener to know, any piece of wisdom, advice, that would be helpful, today, tomorrow, this week, that they could start implementing in their life to start being a better leader, a better husband, wife, better in the workplace, from what you've seen in your experience that you've lived so far?
Yeah, I think it would go back to the one thing you asked me earlier. Seek the way, not your way, right? Seek the way.
Mm-hmm.
I ultimately mean, like, for me, the way is Jesus himself. Like, he called himself the way, the truth, and the life. I want to seek him, not my way. There's this verse in scripture that says, man plans his way, but the Lord establishes steps. So it's like, I'm concerned with way, and the Lord's like, take this step. Faithfully take this step. Faithfully take this step.
Mm-hmm.
So when I seek the way and I can remove myself from that, then I'm going to be better off. That's true as a husband. That's true as a dad. Gosh, as a dad, you're not going to get that many attaboys. My 1.5-year-old, I have a 3.5-year-old and 1.5-year-old. Neither of them have thanked me for changing their diapers. And like, they're disgusting. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get that many attaboys. Get out of the way. Learn that it's not about you, and you're going to be better off.
That's right. Well, and then one question. You don't have to answer this because I don't want to get you in trouble. All right, but this is the one that you got to think clearly here. I'm sure you'll know the right answer, but anyways, right now, University of Virginia, not Virginia Tech, University of Virginia calls you, says, we see what you're doing at Hanover. You want to be the offensive coordinator at Virginia. You want to interview. Do you even think about it?
No. To be honest, like, that'd be true for most any college,
Yeah.
I am in a position where I get to set my schedule right now with all the different stuff. It's full, but I have to prioritize my relationship with Jesus, then my relationship with my wife, and then my relationship with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't do that because of some dream to go coach college football, it's just not worth it for me.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. And there's too much that I'm involved in now that feels unfinished that, like, I would maybe down the line, I don't know, but not now.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, Coach 5 a.m., Sam Rogers, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and, about leadership, about your experience. I think it's incredibly valuable. I hope people can go out there, follow you, see, get your content. This is only going to make them better at whatever they're doing right now. And so thank you again for your time and being on the Smart Pro Radio podcast.
Thanks so much, Rick. I appreciate you guys.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Smart Pro Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please make sure to subscribe and share it. And don't miss out, because on May 5th, we got a huge guest, and I'm a big fan of this guy. It's Dr. John Deloney. We're going to talk about mental health. We're going to talk about money and relationships. Don't miss out.